The sky was black glass smeared with stars and the sea didn't move. Not in any way a person could feel from the steel deck of a cargo ship. But Kate Morgan felt it anyway. She felt it in the roll under her knees and the salt that clung to her cracked lips and in the way the air smelled of diesel and something darker. She was on her knees, hands zip-tied behind her back, ankles shackled to a cinder block, slick with ocean slime. Barefoot now, one boot had been ripped off in the scuffle. The other lay 10 feet away useless. They'd spent 2 days trying to break her, asking about routes, schedules, encryption keys, asking who else knew about the shipment. She'd given them nothing, not her clearance level, not her team designation, not even her middle name. The man standing over her tapped ash from his cigarette. His name was Volkov, 45 years old, salt and pepper beard eyes like chips of blue ice. Former KGB, now running a weapons smuggling operation that spanned 3 continents. Last chance American, Volkov said. His accent was thick but precise. The codes for your tracking device. Where is it planted? Who else knows about this ship? Kate lifted her head. One eye was swollen shut, crusted with dried blood from where they'd struck her with a pistol grip. Her dark hair hung in matted strands across her face. She looked at Volkov not with fear, but with the cold calculation of someone memorizing details for later. Go to hell, she whispered through split lips. Volkov sighed as if disappointed by a student who'd failed an easy test. He nodded to the 2 men standing behind her. Buzzards don't circle water, one of them muttered. Not a soldier's voice. Contract work. Eastern European accent, paid to do cleanup, not ask questions. Another lit a cigarette and blew smoke sideways. She'll be crab meat by dawn. Neither used her name. That was the point. Commander Kate Morgan Naval Intelligence didn't exist on this boat. Didn't exist on any manifest or any radio frequency or any satellite feed. She'd vanished 2 days ago somewhere between Gibraltar and Tangier, just like they wanted, except they hadn't expected her to still be breathing. You sure she ain't tagged? The first one asked. Volkov reached down, grabbed her by the jaw, and twisted her face toward the ship's floodlight. Blood smeared down her temple from a cut above her brow. She's clean, he grunted. They hadn't checked her wetsuit liner properly, and even if they had, they wouldn't have known what to look for. The little rigid bump sewn into the seam behind her knee wasn't for comfort. It was a backup blade, waterproof ceramic invisible to metal detectors. But that wouldn't matter if she hit the water wrong. The third man stepped forward, grabbed the cinder block, and dragged her toward the edge of the deck. Her knees scraped raw over the grating. She didn't fight. Couldn't. Not yet. Eyes half-lidded, chest heaving. She was conserving oxygen, not surrendering. The sea opened beneath her like a black grave. Bye-bye, American, the smoker said and kicked the block. Kate went over without a sound. Water swallowed her whole. 1 year earlier, Naval Special Warfare Center, Coronado, California. The air tasted of salt, sweat, and suffering. The combat training pool, Olympic-sized but filled with obstacles, echoed with the shouts of instructors and the desperate gasping of recruits. 24 women treaded water in full combat gear, faces strained with effort after 6 hours of continuous aquatic hell. Only 12 would make it to the next phase. Only 1 would complete the program. Admiral James Harrington stood on the observation deck, his weathered face impassive as he watched the women below. 62 years old with silver hair, cropped military short, in posture as rigid as the day he'd graduated Budari's training 40 years ago. One of the original SEAL Team's 6 members, he'd spent decades in the shadows before rising to his current position. Project Poseidon, he murmured. Tell me why we're wasting resources, Captain Reynolds. Captain Sarah Reynolds, the program's director, stood at his side. Because the battlefield has changed, sir. Our enemies don't expect women in certain roles. That gives us a tactical advantage. The standards haven't changed, Harrington replied. 90% of male candidates wash out. What makes you think any of these women will make it? Reynolds pointed to one recruit in particular. Lean, muscular, with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun. While the others struggled, she maintained position with mechanical precision, eyes alert, despite the exhaustion evident in her face. Morgan, former Olympic swimmer. Advanced degrees in linguistics and cryptography. Father was a SEAL killed in Panama. She's been preparing for this her entire life. Harrington studied the woman. She hasn't faced Hell Week yet. No, sir, but when she does, I'm betting on Morgan. 4 days later at 0200 hours, Kate Morgan stood on the beach in driving rain alongside 23 other female candidates and 80 male candidates from the standard Buddy US class. Instructors circled like sharks' flashlights, piercing the darkness, voices raised to be heard over the thundering surf. Welcome to Hell Week, ladies and gentlemen. For the next 5 days, you will not sleep, you will not rest, you will be cold, wet, and miserable every second. You will be pushed beyond what you believe possible. By the end of the first day, half the candidates had rung the bell, the signal of surrender. By day 3, only 3 women remained, including Kate. By day 5, she stood alone among the female candidates, swaying on her feet, covered in sand, eyes sunken, but focused. Admiral Harrington observed the final evolution, a brutal team-carrying exercise from beneath an umbrella. He watched as Kate, paired with the remaining male candidates, refused to falter even when her muscles visibly trembled with fatigue. When it was over, when only 20 candidates remained from the original 100-plus, Harrington approached Kate as she sat shivering in a medical tent. "Morgan, team," he said, his voice gruff. "Why didn't you quit?" She looked up at him, face gaunt from 5 days without sleep, eyes clear despite everything. "Because quitting wasn't an option, sir." Something in her answer resonated with him. Perhaps it was the echo of his own daughter's voice, Sarah Harrington, a Marine officer killed in Fallujah years ago. Project Poseidon isn't just an experiment, Morgan. It's a chance to rewrite the rules. But the world isn't ready to know about it yet. If you complete this program, your existence as a SEAL will be classified above top secret. Kate held his gaze. "I'm not doing this for recognition, sir." Harrington nodded once. "Good, because you won't get any." 6 months later, after completing the most grueling special operations training ever devised, Kate Morgan became the first and only woman to earn the Trident, the SEAL insignia. In a private ceremony attended by only 5 people, Harrington himself pinned the emblem on her uniform. "Your father would be proud," he said quietly. "Thank you, sir," she replied, blinking back unexpected tears. What neither of them knew then and then was that the real test was still to come. The Pentagon, Washington, D.C. 8 weeks before the incident at sea, the secure briefing room was buried 3 levels below ground, its walls lined with acoustic damping material, its electronic security systems among the most sophisticated on the planet. 8 people sat around a polished table, their faces illuminated by recessed lighting that cast no shadows. Admiral Harrington sat at the head of the table, a digital folder open before him displaying classified satellite imagery. Kate Morgan sat to his right now. Lieutenant Commander Morgan, her dark hair pulled back, her uniform impeccable. "The SS Hippocrates," Harrington said, enlarging an image of a cargo vessel. "Supposedly a medical supply transport operating under a Panamanian flag. Satellite tracking shows it making unscheduled stops in ports known for weapons trafficking. Intelligence suggests it's being used to move advanced naval weapon systems to unauthorized buyers. Russian and Chinese interests primarily," added CIA Deputy Director Marshall. "The technology includes next-generation torpedo guidance systems and underwater drone prototypes." "How are they acquiring American naval technology?" Kate asked. Marshall's expression darkened. "That's the real problem. We believe there's a mole, someone high up in naval intelligence providing access codes, shipping schedules, and classified design specifications." "We need confirmation," Harrington continued, "and we need to know who the mole is. That's where you come in, Morgan." Kate nodded, already understanding. "You'll infiltrate the Hippocrates on its next supply run. Your cover will be as a WHO medical inspector. Plant tracking devices gather evidence on the weapons and identify any communications that might lead us to our traitor." "Why me specifically, sir?" she asked, though she suspected the answer. "Because no one expects a woman to be a SEAL," Harrington replied. "Your cover will be more believable, and you have the training to handle whatever happens." What Harrington didn't say, but what everyone in the room understood, was that Kate was expendable in the eyes of the higher command. If Project Poseidon's only graduate vanished, there would be no public record to explain, no questions to answer. "When do I leave?" Kate asked. 48 hours. You'll coordinate with Lieutenant Colonel Harrison from CIA Special Activities. He'll be your handler for this operation." As if on cue, the door opened and Michael Harrison entered, 45 years old, with the runner's build and the cold eyes of someone who'd spent too long in the shadows. Kate recognized him immediately, one of the vocal critics of Project Poseidon during its development. "Morgan," Harrison said with a nod that contained neither warmth nor respect. "Harrison," she replied, matching his tone. "I've read your file," he continued. "Impressive on paper. Let's see how it translates to the field." Kate held his gaze without responding. She'd encountered men like Harrison throughout her career. Men who believed women had no place in combat roles, who viewed her achievements as political stunts rather than earned through merit. "You'll both report to me directly," Harrington cut in, sensing the tension. "This operation is classified Echo 6. No electronic communications once Morgan is in place. Dead drops and emergency protocols only." After the briefing, Harrington pulled Kate aside in the hallway. "Harrison doesn't believe in you," he said bluntly. "Prove him wrong." "I will, sir." "This isn't a test, Morgan. This is real. We have a traitor selling American secrets, and people are dying because of it. 3 weeks ago, a prototype torpedo with our guidance system sank a research vessel in the South China Sea. 37 civilians dead." Kate's expression hardened. "I understand the stakes." Harrington studied her face. "Your father used to say that the most dangerous predators isn't the one that roars, but the one that waits. Be patient, be thorough, and trust no one. Not even Harrison. Especially not Harrison." The SS Hippocrates Mediterranean Sea. 2 days before being thrown overboard, Kate Morgan moved through the ship's corridors with practiced confidence, clipboard in hand, wearing the white coat and credentials of a World Health Organization inspector. Her cover identity, Dr. Catherine Miller, infectious disease specialist, gave her access to most areas of the vessel under the guise of a standard health inspection. For 2 days, she had methodically worked her way through the ship, planting miniature tracking devices and gathering evidence. Her WHO credentials and fluency in 4 languages had kept suspicions minimal. The captain, a Greek named Spiros, with an alcoholic's nose and mercenary's eyes, had been irritated but compliant. "This section houses medical supplies bound for North Africa," he explained, leading her to a secure hold on the lower deck. "Vaccines and antibiotics mainly. I'll need to verify temperature controls and storage conditions," Kate replied, adjusting her glasses, ordinary looking, but equipped with a micro camera. "Of course." The captain unlocked the heavy door. "Take your time. I have duties on the bridge." Alone in the hold, Kate quickly went to work. The crates labeled "medical supplies fragile" were arranged in neat rows, but she noted that the security measures reinforced doors. Motion sensors, armed guards at intervals seemed excessive for antibiotics. She selected a crate at random and carefully pried it open. Inside, beneath a thin layer of medical packaging, lay components for submarine-launched missile guidance systems, American-made with serial numbers that had been filed off. Kate photographed everything, then resealed the crate precisely as she'd found it. Moving deeper into the hold, she discovered more weapons, tactical communications arrays, sonar jamming equipment, prototype underwater drones still in Naval Research Laboratory packaging. "Jackpot," she whispered to herself, carefully documenting each find. On her way out, she attached a magnetic tracking beacon to the underside of a support beam, the third such device she'd planted around the ship. Each transmitted on a different encrypted frequency, ensuring that at least one would remain operational if the others were discovered. Back in her small cabin that evening, Kate prepared her findings for the dead drop scheduled at their next port. She'd arranged the photos and notes on an encrypted drive hidden within a hollowed-out novel. Harrison would be waiting in Tangier to receive it. A soft knock at her door made her freeze. She quickly concealed her work and adjusted her posture to appear casual before opening it. "Dr. Miller." It was Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, dressed as a shipping company inspector, his cover for this operation. His expression was unreadable. "May I come in?" Kate hesitated, then stepped aside. This wasn't part of the protocol. They weren't supposed to acknowledge each other on the ship. "Is there a problem?" she asked once the door was closed. Harrison didn't answer immediately. He scanned her cabin with practiced efficiency, then turned to face her. "Change of plans. We're extracting tonight." Kate frowned. "That wasn't the arrangement. I have more areas to document, and we're still 2 days from the rendezvous point." "New intelligence suggests your cover may be compromised." Harrison's voice was flat. "There's a Zodiac coming at 0200 hours, southeastern side of the ship, lower deck access hatch." Something felt wrong. Harrington's warning echoed in her mind. Trust no one. Who authorized this change, she asked. Harrington himself, Echo Protocol, Sierra 9. Kate maintained her neutral expression, but internally alarm bells rang. Sierra 9 was a duress code, a signal that communication had been compromised. But it was also used to verify authentic change orders. The fact that Harrison knew it suggested either legitimacy or a serious security breach. I'll be ready, she said simply. Harrison nodded and moved to leave, then paused. You've done good work, Morgan. Better than I expected. The compliment, unexpected and out of character, only heightened her suspicion. After Harrison left, Kate quickly checked the security of her cabin, finding a nearly imperceptible device attached to the underside of her desk, a listening bug that hadn't been there earlier. She left it in place, not wanting to alert whoever had placed it. Instead of packing as Harrison might expect, she quietly accessed the ship's maintenance schedule that she'd memorized earlier. At 1:30, there would be a power cycling of the lower deck systems, a 30-second window when security cameras would be offline. That would be her chance to verify Harrison's extraction plan independently. When the time came, Kate slipped from her cabin and moved silently through the darkened corridors. Years of SEAL training had taught her how to become a shadow, how to control her breathing so that even in complete silence she made no sound. She reached the southeastern access hatch and concealed herself behind a stack of equipment. From her position, she could observe the extraction point without being seen. The ship's engines thrummed beneath her feet, a steady vibration that masked any small movements. At precisely 0200 hours, she watched as Harrison appeared at the hatch alone. He checked his watch, then spoke quietly into a radio. Kate strained to hear. Package is not at the extraction point. Repeat, package is not present. Proceeding with alternative. There was no Zodiac, no extraction team. It had been a trap. Kate began to retreat, planning to make her way to one of the emergency evacuation routes she'd mapped out. She would need to abort the mission and find her own way off the ship. She had just rounded a corner when pain exploded at the base of her skull. As consciousness fled, she caught a glimpse of Harrison standing over her, face impassive, speaking into his radio again. Package secured. The interrogation room was actually a converted storage container deep in the ship's hold. No windows, one door, a drain in the center of the metal floor. The kind of room designed for questions that left marks. Kate regained consciousness, strapped to a metal chair, her head throbbing, mouth dry as dust. The room spun slightly, suggesting a concussion from the blow that had taken her down. Her cover identity had been stripped away literally. Her WHO clothing was gone, replaced with the wetsuit liner she'd worn underneath. They knew exactly who she was. The door opened and Volkov entered, followed by Harrison. The sight of her handler alongside the Russian arms dealer confirmed what she had suspected: betrayal. Commander Morgan, Volkov said, circling her chair like a shark. Or should I say, Lieutenant Commander Morgan, America's secret weapon. A female Navy SEAL. I admit even I found that hard to believe until your colleague here confirmed it. Harrison didn't meet her eyes. He stood against the wall, arms folded, expression closed. You've been busy on my ship, Volkov continued, planting devices, taking photographs. Very thorough. I don't know what you're talking about, Kate replied, falling back on basic resistance training. Deny everything, admit nothing. Volkov smiled thinly. Please, let's not waste time. We found the tracking devices, all three of them. Clever placement. We found your little camera, too. He held up her glasses. American ingenuity at its finest. He snapped the glasses in half and tossed them aside. What I haven't found yet is the data you have collected. Where is it? Kate said nothing, focusing on a spot on the wall beyond Volkov's shoulder. Her SEER training survival evasion resistance escape had prepared her for interrogation. She knew what was coming. Volkov sighed. I thought we might start civilly. I see that was optimistic. He turned to Harrison. Perhaps you can convince your colleague to be reasonable. Harrison finally looked at Kate, his eyes cold. Tell him what he wants to know, Morgan. This doesn't have to get ugly. It already is, she replied evenly. How long have you been selling out your country, Harrison? A flicker of something, anger perhaps, or shame crossed his face before he controlled it. You don't understand the bigger picture, he said quietly. Enlighten me. Instead, he turned to Volkov. She won't talk easily. She's had extensive resistance training. Everyone talks eventually, Volkov said with the casual confidence of experience. It's just a question of how much they suffer first. What followed was 48 hours of methodical brutality, waterboarding, stress positions that made her shoulders scream, sleep deprivation while diesel engines roared inches from her head. Volkov asked the same questions repeatedly. Where was the data? Who else knew about the ship? What was the extraction plan? Harrison was present for some sessions, absent for others. When he was there, he often tried to play good cop, offering her water, suggesting that cooperation would end the pain. Through it all, Kate revealed nothing. She retreated into the mental fortress built during SEAL training, where pain was just noise, where time became elastic, where the self could detach from the suffering body. They had taken her equipment, her weapons, her dignity, but they couldn't take her training or her resolve. By the end of the second day, Volkov's patience had worn thin. Kate was barely conscious, her body a map of bruises and small burns. Harrison stood in the corner, watching with an expression that had gradually shifted from detachment to something like concern. This is pointless, Volkov finally said. Ishan? She's not going to talk. So what now? Harrison asked. Now we dispose of the problem. Volkov looked at Kate with cold appraisal. She's more dangerous alive than useful. Harrison hesitated. The original plan was to extract information, then turn her. She could be valuable. Too risky. She's been trained to resist turning, and we can't keep her indefinitely. Volkov checked his watch. We're approaching the rendezvous coordinates. After the transfer, we'll deal with her. Deep water burial. As they left her alone again, Kate tested her restraints for the 100th time. The zip ties had no give, the chair was bolted to the floor. But they had made one mistake. They'd returned her to her wetsuit liner after the last interrogation session. The knife was still there, sewn into the seam behind her knee. If she could reach it before they came back, she might have a chance. But Volkov returned too soon with two guards. They cut her free from the chair, only to bind her hands again behind her back. Then they dragged her up through the ship's levels toward the main deck. The night air hit her like a physical blow after so long in the container's stifling heat. Stars wheeled overhead, impossibly bright. The sea stretched in all directions, black and infinite. Kate focused on her breathing, on staying conscious, despite the pain that flared with every movement. They forced her to her knees at the edge of the deck. One of the guards appeared with a cinder block and chain. With brutal efficiency, they secured her ankles to the block. Volkov squatted before her, studying her face with detached curiosity. You know, in another life, I might have recruited someone like you. Such determination is rare. Kate met his gaze steadily. In another life, I'd have put you in the ground already. He actually smiled at that. Perhaps. He stood up. Any final words, Commander? Kate thought of Harrington, of her father, of the oath she'd taken. She thought of the tracking device she'd managed to plant on the hull before being captured, the one they hadn't found because it was designed to activate only after losing her vital sign transmitter. Dead man's switch? The tracking device would start broadcasting once she was gone, sending her last known coordinates to naval intelligence. Whether that would be enough for them to find the ship, she didn't know. But it was something, a final act of duty. Just one, she said, her voice steady despite everything. Poseidon. Confusion flickered across Volkov's face. He didn't understand the reference to her training program's code name, but Harrison did. She saw his eyes widen slightly in recognition. It was a message to him: I died as what I am. A SEAL. Poetic but meaningless, Volkov said with a shrug. He nodded to his men. Finish it. As they dragged her to the edge, Kate's mind cleared with surprising calm. She wasn't afraid. She was calculating. The drop, the depth, the pressure, the darkness. Her training had prepared her for this. If she could survive the impact, if she could reach her knife, if she could free herself from the block before it dragged her too deep. So many ifs, but a chance was all she needed. The sea opened beneath her like a black grave. Bye-bye, American, one of the guards said and kicked the block over the edge. Kate went with it, water swallowing her whole. The weight dragged her faster than her lungs were ready for, but she didn't panic. She twisted just enough to take the pressure off her ribs and let the block pull her vertical. 10 feet, 20, 30. Light vanished and she opened her eyes, and even in the dark, muscle memory kicked in. Her fingers moved behind her back, searching for the blade in the seam. Found it. Tilted her wrist, began sawing. She wasn't dead. Not yet. Not even close. Pressure built behind her eyes as the ocean squeezed down. Her lungs burned, ears popped, and the zip tie bit deep into her wrist with every inch the cinder block dragged her. 35 feet, 40. The darkness wasn't quiet. It was alive. Groaning metal from the freighter above. The screech of bubbles against hull plating. The thump of her own heartbeat climbing into her skull. Kate didn't waste energy looking up. That instinct got people killed. All she focused on was the serrated ceramic edge pressed awkwardly to the tie between her hands. She could feel her arms going numb, but the blade was sharp. And training didn't vanish just because you were bleeding. DevGru combat divers had a saying, if you can move a finger, you can still cut your way out. She'd heard it in a pool at Fort Story. 12 feet deep, blindfolded. A concrete weight looped to her belt. Back then it had sounded dramatic. Now it was doctrine. Her lungs clenched. One more pull, one more scrape. Snap. The tie broke. She kicked off the cinder block with both heels and yanked her knees up. The chain tore at her ankles as it sank. Blood bloomed. Her body screamed to inhale. She didn't. Kate kicked again, angled upward, favoring her left side, spinning slightly as the water thinned. Her knife slipped back into its slit. Her fingers instinctively gripped the inside of her belt, where a shallow curve meant flotation sleeve. 5 feet from the surface, her hand found it. She yanked once. CO2 hissed. Not a life vest, not visible. Just enough buoyancy to keep her above water when the gas hit. She breached the surface like a torpedo mouth, wide lungs exploding as she finally dragged in air. The sea was vast and merciless in every direction. No lights, no horizon, no ship. It was gone. Kate treaded water slow and tight, arms barely moving. Blood from her ankles mixed with the salt, stinging deep. One eye refused to open, but the other tracked high up where the stars still blinked. She didn't panic, not now. Panic was for people with options. Instead, Kate rotated slowly in the water, using the curve of Orion to orient herself south by southwest toward the oil flare she'd seen hours before being captured. Still faintly visible, just a vertical shimmer on the water's edge. The GPS ping should have gone out the moment the ship left her behind. A sticky beacon magnetic core rigged to her own failed dead signal. Someone should be listening. If not, then she'd float, burn, and bleed until the ocean took her. But that flare was still blinking. And blinking meant distance, and distance was measurable, just under 10 nautical miles if she trusted her angle. She always did. Kate adjusted the float sleeve under her ribs, stripped the cord from her wetsuit's inner seam, and tied it tight around her thigh, slowing the blood loss. She whispered the first of her seer mantras. Pain is noise. Noise is useful. Use it to think. Then she started paddling. The vast ocean stretched before her, indifferent to her suffering, to her determination. Beneath her unfathomable depths, above the cold light of distant stars, and somewhere on the horizon, if she could reach it, salvation. But first she had to survive the night, and the ocean was just beginning to show her its true face. The first 30 minutes were manageable. Each slow stroke pushed Kate Morgan further from where she'd been thrown. Blood from her legs dispersed in a faint trail behind her. The flotation sleeve under her ribs kept her barely above the chop, enough to save strength. She moved with the current, not against it, an old diver's trick, but the temperature was dropping. Her fingers curled slowly without her meaning them to. Her teeth clenched involuntarily. Every now and then she'd blink at the flare in the distance, still there, still vertical, and mutter. 3 more strokes, then breathe. She was halfway through her 7th interval when her body started doing the math for her. Core temperature dropping. Blood loss steady but not critical. Dehydration setting in despite the flotation, keeping her energy expenditure low. She had maybe 4 hours before hypothermia made the decision for her. Maybe 6 if she was lucky. The flare was still 3 miles out, maybe more. She did the calculation twice, then a third time, hoping the numbers would change. They didn't. 70% chance she wouldn't make it. She kept paddling anyway. The night sky wheeled overhead, stars tracking their ancient paths with indifference to the small figure struggling beneath them. Kate's training had taught her that the ocean was not an enemy to be defeated, but a force to be respected and navigated. Right now, that force was slowly stealing her body heat degree by precious degree. Her SEAL instructors had emphasized the danger of the cold. Hypothermia doesn't care how tough you think you are, Chief Mendoza had told them. It's just physics. Your body loses heat in water 25 times faster than in air. When your core temperature drops below 95 degrees, your fine motor skills go. Below 93, your mind starts to fog. Below 90, you stop shivering because your body's giving up. Kate estimated she was already below 97. Her movements were becoming sluggish, uncoordinated. The constant pressure of water against her bruised ribs made each breath shallow and painful. The flotation sleeve was keeping her alive, but it wouldn't be enough if she couldn't maintain forward momentum. Keep moving, she whispered to herself, one arm then the other. Then the water changed, cool then colder, then suddenly wrong. There was a stillness beneath her that didn't match the rest of the ocean. She stopped paddling, let herself drift. Silence. A low tug beneath her foot, then a bump. Not a current, not debris, a presence. Kate turned slowly in the water, then hands flat. The left side of her body was half numb, but her eyes were alert now, scanning every faint shimmer under the surface. Then it appeared 12 feet of muscle and silence. Oceanic, white-tipped, blunt nose, wide fins. A survivor's shark. The kind that hunted shipwrecks and trailed bleeding mammals for hours. It circled her once at a distance, then disappeared. Seconds passed, then it came back closer. Kate didn't panic, didn't move. She remembered the voice of her SEAL instructor. Stay vertical. Make eye contact. You're not prey unless you act like it. The shark veered right, then curved back closer again. Kate unstrapped the dive knife from her thigh. Her hands were stiff grip weak. She switched to reverse grip and floated taller in the water, kicking once to make herself seem bigger. The shark disappeared again, then shot up fast. Kate flared her left arm wide, turned just enough to lead it past her. The shark grazed her leg just enough to taste blood. It rolled beneath her and looped around again. She let out a hiss, not fear, timing. She pivoted as it lunged again, this time more direct, more committed. She struck first knife forward straight into the gill slit as it passed. The shark thrashed. Its flank collided with her hip. The blade tore free. Salt water filled her mouth as she was shoved half under, but she didn't let go of the knife. She surfaced, coughing hard, chest burning, and faced the direction it had gone. It circled again slower, then peeled off. The decoy flare she clipped to her belt ignited underwater. Just a flash of light and heat trailing away. The shark followed. Kate watched the ocean settle, heart pounding. She'd won not by strength, but by discipline. She reset her orientation to the flare and started paddling again. The encounter had cost her precious body heat, more blood loss and energy she couldn't afford to spare. But it had also reminded her of something essential. She was not merely surviving. She was fighting. The distinction mattered. Time became elastic. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. The stars wheeled overhead. Kate found herself thinking of Admiral Harrington, of her father, of the oath she'd taken when she'd received her trident. Her father had been a SEAL in the early days, before the teams became legendary, when they were still figuring out what sea, air, land truly meant. He died in Panama in 1989 during the operation to capture Noriega. Kate had been only 5, too young to understand, but old enough to remember the men in dress uniforms who'd come to their house. The folded flag, her mother's quiet tears. Years later, she'd found her father's journal. In it, he'd written about the sea. Water is the great equalizer, he'd noted. It doesn't care about your rank or your muscles or your ego. It only respects preparation and calm. Kate had taken those words to heart. When other girls were playing sports or dating, she was swimming endless laps, holding her breath until spots danced before her eyes, studying oceanography and marine navigation. By 18, she could outswim collegiate athletes. By 22, she'd mastered 5 different underwater breathing techniques. By 28, she'd become what her father never lived, to see a SEAL in all but name. And now at 38, she was testing every lesson, every skill, every moment of training against the ocean itself. Dawn broke and thin slashes of pale gold smeared across the horizon like someone had torn the sky open with a dull blade. The water shimmered now, deceptively calm cold in a way that got behind her bones. Kate squinted into the light lips, cracked jaw tight. Her breath came in ragged pulls. Stroke, pause, float, repeat. She was beginning to drift west of the flare. Current pulling her sideways, but she kept recalibrating. Star to port wind, to stern, one eye swollen shut, the other still watching. The calculations in her head grew more difficult. Hypothermia was affecting her cognition. She knew this intellectually, could recognize the symptoms, but couldn't stop the slide. Her thoughts kept returning to the ship, to Harrison's betrayal, to Volkov's cold smile. She kept seeing the moment when they'd kicked the cinder block over the edge, feeling the plunge into darkness. Focus, she muttered, her voice a rough scrape. Orientate, decide, act. The Navy SEAL decision cycle. The framework that had guided her through the most challenging operations of her career. Orientate, she was approximately 2 miles from the oil platform, drifting west at increasing speed as her strength failed. Decide, correct course, conserve energy for the final approach. Act 3 strong strokes, then rest. Repeat. Simple in theory, nearly impossible in execution as her body betrayed her 1 degree at a time. But Kate Morgan had spent her entire life pushing beyond what others considered possible. When Bud's instructors had told her women couldn't complete the training, she doubled her conditioning. When fellow officers had smirked behind her back about political correctness, she'd outperformed them in every metric. When her own body had screamed at her to ring the bell during Hell Week, she'd found reserves of willpower that surprised even her. That same willpower now forced her numbing arms to continue their mechanical rhythm. Stroke, pause, stroke. The sun climbed higher, its heat, a cruel illusion that didn't penetrate the cold grip of the ocean. Kate's world narrowed to the simplest equation: movement equals life. Stillness equals death. She wasn't sure how long she'd been swimming when she started hearing her father's voice. At first, she recognized it as a hallucination, a symptom of advancing hypothermia. The mind created comforting delusions as systems began to shut down. "Keep your line, Katie girl," the voice said, using her childhood nickname. "Don't drift with the current." "I know," she whispered to the empty air. "I'm trying." "Try harder," the voice replied, and it was no longer her father's voice, but Admiral Harrington's. Sharp, commanding. "You didn't survive SEAL training to die in open water." "Sir, yes, sir," she mumbled reflexively. Her limbs felt impossibly heavy. Each stroke required conscious thought, deliberate command. Her body wanted to curl in on itself, to surrender to the cold. It was the natural response, the survival instinct to preserve core temperature by reducing exposed surface area. But Kate knew better. Fetal position meant death in open water. Vertical posture, continued movement, those were her only options. 3 more strokes, she told herself again. Then breathe. The sun reached its zenith, a white-hot disk that seemed to mock her struggle. The water reflected its glare, forcing Kate to keep her good eye half closed. The oil platform flare was now obscured by the brightness, but she maintained her heading based on the sun's position. Time continued to slip and slide. Moments of clarity alternated with periods of confusion. Kate found herself reciting SEAL training mantras without conscious thought. The only easy day was yesterday. Pain is weakness leaving the body. Under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion, you sink to your level of training. Her level of training was extraordinary, but even extraordinary had limits. By mid-afternoon, Kate's paddling had become erratic. Her core temperature had dropped dangerously low. The hypothermia was advanced enough that she'd stopped feeling cold, a dangerous sign. Her body had given up on shivering, conserving what little energy remained for vital functions. The platform seemed no closer. Perhaps it was a mirage. Perhaps it had been a mirage all along. This is how it ends, she thought with a strange clarity. Not in combat, not completing some high-value mission, just a slow surrender to physics and biology, heat transfer, muscle fatigue, circulatory collapse. Her arms stopped moving. Her legs hung beneath her like dead weight. The flotation sleeve kept her face above water, but for how much longer? She couldn't feel her extremities anymore. Her vision blurred. In that moment of surrender, a memory surfaced with startling vividness. Admiral Harrington standing before her on graduation day, his weathered face solemn as he pinned the trident to her uniform. "Morgan," he'd said quietly so only she could hear, "this isn't just metal. It's a covenant between you and every SEAL who came before, between you and your country, between you and yourself." "I understand, sir," she'd replied. "No, you don't. Not yet." His eyes, usually hard as granite, had softened momentarily. "But someday, when everything seems lost, when you're at the edge of what's possible, you'll remember this moment. and then you'll understand. Kate blinked. Salt water stung her eyes, or perhaps they were tears. She wasn't sure anymore. I understand now, sir, she whispered to the empty horizon. With monumental effort, she forced her arms to move again. One stroke. Another. Her body screamed in protest. Her mind fragmented with the effort. But she kept going. Because that was the covenant. You didn't stop. Not while you still had breath. Not while you could still move a finger. That was when she heard it. A low hum. At first just a ripple under the wind, then thicker, fuller. Rotors. Kate craned her neck, forcing herself upright against the flotation sleeve. A black dot cut across the sky, silhouetted against the afternoon sun. Not commercial. No contrails, angular wings, twin engines. MH-60 Seahawk. Navy bird. Too high, too fast. Kate reached for her belt. Her fingers could barely close anymore. Swollen, stinging white at the knuckles. But she still had her fallback mirror clipped to a retractable cord. She yanked it free, angled it toward the sky, and caught the sun. Flash pause, flash flash. 3 seconds. Repeat. She kept flashing. Inside the Seahawk's cockpit, the sensor operator tilted his head. We just passed a glint off the water. 11.0 low. The pilot leaned forward. Reflection. Too rhythmic to be wave scatter. Could be a decoy, the crew chief muttered. They've used mirrors on buoys before. Draw us in. No signal buoy in these waters, said the co-pilot, and we've got a heat bloom barely human temp drifting off thermal scan. The pilot exhaled through his nose. Not a decoy. Decoys don't bleed. He banked the bird hard left, dropping altitude fast. Back on the surface, Kate was starting to fade. Her shoulders ached like they'd been nailed in place. Her lips moved, but she wasn't saying anything now, just moving breath. She still flashed the mirror, even when she had to rest it against her chest. Then the wind shifted. It hit her like a slap, hard, fast, warm, and dry. Rotor wash. She looked up. The MH-60 was circling now, nose tilted, side door open. A diver dropped from the rail like a shadow with fins. Another followed. She let her head fall back and closed her eyes. For the first time since they threw her off that boat, she stopped kicking, and the water held her. Hands grabbed her seconds later, tactical gloves strong and certain. A voice near her ear shouted over the churn spray. U.S. Navy, you're safe. She opened her eye, whispered one word. Tracked. Vessel. The diver froze mid-lift. Morgan. Kate Morgan. She nodded weakly. Beacon was real. Then her body finally gave out, but not her mind. That part stayed awake, waiting for the next move. Kate didn't remember the lift. One moment, cold hands braced her neck. The next, the ocean dropped away beneath her, and the wind hit like a wall. Rotor wash blasted seawater across her face as she rose through the spray. Strapped into a rescue sling, body-limp legs trailing blood, dripping steadily from her thigh into the void below. The MH-60 skids caught sunlight just as she cleared the rail. A gloved hand reached out and hauled her in, fast but careful. Get her down now. The cabin was hot, and loud voices overlapping equipment, clanking doors rattling. She hit the deck on a stretcher, and someone immediately pressed a thermal blanket to her chest. Another voice called for vitals. BP's tanking, 82/43. She's freezing from the inside out. Run 1 IV saline with heat packs. The medic worked fast, ripping open gauze, cutting through her vest, peeling it back to reveal her torso. Her skin was pale gray, marked with pressure lines from the flotation gear. He tapped her cheek gently. Ma'am, stay with me. What's your name? She turned her head barely. Her lips moved. No sound. He leaned closer. Kate. Morgan. Commander. The words came out like air through crushed glass. Another medic leaned in. We need to divert back. She's not going to make it to... No, she croaked. Turn around. Turn around where? She lifted her hands, slow shaking toward the eastern horizon. Freighter, weapons, hidden manifest, 2 hours max. The cabin fell still. The lead crewman stepped forward. You have proof. Pinged it before they caught me. Tracking beacon, lower hull port side. Someone at the sensor station spun his screen. She's right. We're still getting weak ping telemetry. Drifted a bit, but the signature's stable. The pilot's voice cut in through headset comms. Say again what beacon? Classified Navy tracker, the sensor operator said. Passive magnetic, not standard issue. She must have planted it before extraction went bad. Kate fought to sit up, the medic's hands stopping her short. They think I'm gone. They won't run. The crew chief didn't wait. Get me channeled to Seahorse Command. Task Unit 24-5. Tell them we've got a live intel asset in critical condition requesting intercept authority. The medic pressed a heat pack against her collarbone. That's not how this works. You need fluids, antibiotics, evac. You're septic. She locked eyes with him. I said turn the bird. He hesitated, then keyed his mic. Pilot, she's echo clearance. Returning. The helicopter banked hard east, slicing across the waves with sudden purpose. Inside, Kate closed her eyes, but just for a second. Then she opened them again and reached for the nearest crewman. Give me a pen. He looked confused. She pointed at the back of her hand. Rendezvous coordinates before I forget. The inside of the Seahawk smelled like heat packs, iodine, and sweat. Kate was laid out across the portside bench, torso wrapped in compression foil line running from her arm to a swaying bag of warm saline. Her right leg was splinted with foam, brackets, blood still soaking through the thigh dressing. A medic hovered nearby, adjusting the drip rate every 30 seconds. Keep her flat, he muttered. She stands, she crashes. But Kate wasn't listening. She was watching the sensor feed on the crew chief's tablet. Heat map overlay bouncing slightly with the bird's motion. A blinking red dot sat inside the shadow of a container ship hull. Static telemetry signal. Weak but steady. That's the ping, she said, voice thin through cracked lips. My ping. You're tracking it live, she asked. The crew chief nodded. Barely. Looks like a modified freighter. No call sign, no cargo log, no transponder. Might be flagged as medical aid transport. Kate coughed, once winced. They're using it to smuggle weapons. American pattern crates, Navy surplus. I saw serial numbers scratched off. The pilot's voice cut in over internal comms. We're rerouting south by southeast. 2 hours to intercept. No rules of engagement issued. Then get them issued, Kate said. This isn't a suspicion. This is evidence. The crew looked at each other, then at her. You're not just an analyst, are you? One asked. Naval Intelligence Liaison DevGru affiliate, Echo 6 clearance. She didn't blink. That gives me temporary field authority when transmission is compromised. The sensor operator hesitated. We're not your team right now. Yes, she said, pointing at the pulsing dot. You are. The comm specialist relayed the request to Joint Command. Kate kept speaking now to the pilot directly. Tell them the beacon's on the portside hull just below waterline, and if it stops transmitting, the ship submerge the device. That's your kill switch. You really planted it, the medic asked, even after they caught you. I planted it because they caught me. She reached for the medic's pen in the back of her own hand. Scribbled fast numbers overlapping. Rendezvous coordinates, she said. They're heading for a private dock in Somalia. Security is mercenary run. If you wait until they dock, they'll offload before we can build probable cause. Then we intercept en route. No, she said, you don't intercept. You follow until backup arrives. If they divert course or drop anchor, I'll confirm the dock pattern. The comms officer turned from his headset. Command says standby. They're looping in a submersible unit for black hole intercept. Closest naval asset is already submerged. USS Colorado. They're an hour from reposition. Kate sat up slowly, vision swimming. I'm going on that sub. You're barely alive, the medic snapped. She met his eyes. Then you better keep me that way. The USS Colorado surfaced under moonlight, barely breaking the skin of the ocean. From above, it looked like a shadow trying to breathe. Silent, predatory, sleek as a whale with a purpose. The Seahawk circled once, then hovered low. Rotor wash rippled at the surface in concentric waves as a stretcher line lowered from the side hatch. Kate Morgan came down slow, not like cargo, like authority. 2 SEALs in black dry suits met her on the midship deck. No words, just nods and firm grips. They moved her below decks through a narrow hatch, down a ladder, and into the glowing heartbeat of the sub. The control room was low-ceilinged, in warm lined with green-lit consoles and personnel wearing headsets and calm faces. A junior officer handed her a towel and a packet of electrolyte paste. She ripped it open and swallowed without blinking. Ma'am, the XO began. We were briefed en route. You've got the ping data and target telemetry live. Freighter's rerouting slightly just by 3 degrees, she rasped, tapping the tablet. Still holding course towards Somalia, but skirting the original shipping lane. Someone's tipped them off. Wasn't us, the SEAL team leader said, stepping forward. He was stocky, close-cropped eyes like flint. Commander Rafe Morgan, Task Unit 24 and 5. No relation, he added, with the ghost of a smile. We've got 6 men full SDV capability and 2 underwater ingress options. You've run this route before, Kate asked. 3 times. Somali coast is loose netting. Ports leak. What do you need, he asked. She didn't hesitate. SDV insert at 1. 5 nautical. East approach. They'll expect boarding from starboard if they spot us. You're riding in, he asked, a trace of disbelief. She nodded. I planted the beacon. I have visual layout. They move containers to block upper access decks. I can walk you through that blind. The commander looked at the medic beside her. She'll hold, the medic said, but not for long. Kate glanced around the planning table. A 3D topo overlay of the freighter hovered above a projector pad. Red squares marked containers. A yellow dot pulsed low near the hull. They've got about 90 minutes before landfall, Rafe said. After that, it's deniable cargo washed, buried, sold to people who don't file receipts. And we've, one shot, Kate muttered. She reached for the digital stylus and marked 3 red X's on the schematic. Entry ladders here. Dry access to interrogation hold here. Hostiles typically sleep in forward compartments. Weapons cache mid-deck. Take them quiet. We only get 1 clean hit. One of the SEALs spoke up. How many hostiles we looking at? Confirmed 8 during my detention. Could be 10 now if they rotated crew at the last port. Most are contractors. Balkan, maybe Russian, former military, but sloppy. They rely on isolation, not training. She zoomed in on the engine room. Their weak point is here. No backup generator. You cut main power, they're blind and deaf for 45 seconds before the emergency kicks in. That's your window. Rafe studied her face. You counted seconds while they were beating you. I counted everything. A junior tech passed her a comms earpiece. Encrypted channel. You'll be Vulture 6 for the operation. Kate clipped it on. It fit. Rafe gave her a look. You don't owe them this. She met his gaze, eyes like broken glass soldered back together. They threw me into the ocean, she said. No, I'm bringing the tide. The water swallowed them without a sound. Twin SDV sealed delivery vehicles slipped out from the dorsal hatch of the USS Colorado like shadows detaching from a larger one. Low-profile batteries silent, barely visible, even on infrared. Each held 3 men and 1 mission. Kate was crammed in the rear hull of the lead SDV, chest pressed to her knees, calm, snug, under her hood rifle secured across her lap. Her body hurt like fire wrapped in ice, but her hands were steady. 60 meters to intercept point, came Rafe's voice over comms. No sonar pings. Freighters running blind. She blinked, her eyes open inside the mask. The viewport showed almost nothing, just bioluminescent flecks and the faint pulse of the beacon she'd planted, now glowing like a heartbeat in the dark. Her beacon. She keyed her mic. Portside intake vents midline hull seam. They lead to ballast compartments unlocked from inside, last I saw. The SDV angled up, arcing silently toward the underside of the freighter, now looming above them like a blackened wall. Roger, Rafe said, stacking left. The SEALs detached first 4 frogmen, disappearing upward like ghosts. Kate followed slower, her body protesting every kick, but she kept going. She reached the vent grill and felt for the latch. A manual lever behind a rusted panel, still loose, still unchained. She popped it. Water surged past her as she squeezed through the narrow duct elbows and knees, scraping rusted bolts inside the ballast cavity. It was quiet again. Dead metal, stale water, the soft chime of her breathing in the mask. The SEALs regrouped. No words. They moved like one organism over around through narrow channels until they reached the internal maintenance ladder. Kate signaled once and started climbing. Above them, the hatch to the engine room loomed. She placed her hand on the latch, counted to 5, then turned. The metal lifted with a soft gasp. They emerged into heat and noise. Thrum of diesel rattle of a misaligned fan belt. No footsteps, no alarm. Kate pointed to the blind corner behind the backup generator. Rafe moved. His team followed. 2 guards on rotation, she whispered. Usually sleep between shifts. Their cabins through that bulkhead. Far side of the galley. He nodded, tapped his wrist. 30 minutes until dock. They moved past stacked crates with falsified medical labels, past pallets of grain sacks, hiding steel ammunition tubes. Every twist matched what she remembered. Every corner she'd once been dragged around was now approached on her terms. Then they reached the stairwell to the upper deck. Kate took point. Not fast, not loud, just steady. They were inside now. Past steel, past noise, past excuses. And there were men above who still thought she was dead. She tapped her mic. Vulture 6 in position. Permission to breach. Rafe's voice came back without hesitation. Breach granted. And just like that, the hunted became the hunter. The USS Colorado had gone silent, hovering beneath the surface a quarter-mile from the freighter. Inside the submarine's control room, the captain watched the mission feed with practiced calm. Years of service had taught him to trust his operators once they were deployed. No micromanagement, no second-guessing. The comms officer at his elbow monitored the encrypted channel. SEAL team has made entry, sir. Moving to Phase 2. The captain nodded once. Colorado holds position. All stop, maintain depth. On his screen, 6 infrared signatures moved through the freighter's lower decks like ghosts. 5 SEALs and 1 woman who by all accounts should be dead. Intelligence officers weren't supposed to lead combat operations. But then Commander Kate Morgan wasn't just an intelligence officer. She was something the Navy had never officially acknowledged a female SEAL. Sir, the comms officer said, Seahawk reports increased radio traffic from the freighter. They may be aware of our presence. The captain's expression didn't change. Alert the team. Extraction protocol Bravo now in effect. Inside the freighter, Kate felt the ship's rhythm change. A subtle shift in engine vibration, a new tension in the metal around them. Her instincts honed through years of operations told her they'd been compromised. They know we're here, she whispered into her mic. Rafe nodded once. Change of plans, aggressive posture, take the bridge first, engine room second. The team moved with practiced efficiency, weapons up, communication reduced to hand signals. Kate led them through a maintenance corridor she'd mapped during her captivity, a path that bypassed the main passageways, where resistance would be heaviest. Her body screamed with every movement. The medical patches and stimulants were wearing off. Her vision occasionally doubled, forcing her to blink hard to restore focus. But there was a strange clarity to her mind, a diamond-hard purpose that transcended physical limitations. They reached a junction where the corridor split. Kate pointed right toward a ladder that would take them to the command deck. As they approached, voices echoed from above, urgent, alarmed. Russian and Serbian mixing in panicked tones. The first guard appeared at the top of the ladder, weapon drawn but uncertain. Before he could react, a SEAL at the rear of the formation fired once. Suppressed round, clean hit. The guard collapsed without a sound. Move, Rafe ordered. They ascended in fluid sequence, each operator covering sectors as they emerged onto the upper deck. 2 more guards appeared from the galley. 2 more silent shots dropped them. Kate felt no satisfaction, no vindication, just the cold mathematics of combat. Threats eliminated, mission continuing. They approached the bridge from the rear access, pausing at the final bulkhead door. Inside, they could hear raised voices, Volkov's distinct accent cutting through the chaos, issuing orders. Rafe looked at Kate. Your call. She checked her weapon. Breach? The SEAL at point position placed a small-shaped charge on the door hinge. 3-second delay. Everyone turned away, protected their ears. The charge detonated with a muted thump. The door sagged. They moved through in practice sequence, first man high, second low, third covering the center, converging fire patterns, eliminating any possibility of survival for those inside. Except they didn't fire. Because standing in the center of the bridge holding a satellite phone and staring at them in shock was not Volkov. It was Harrison. Kate stepped forward, weapon aimed at his chest. Don't move. Harrison's face shifted through emotions, surprise, fear, then something like resignation. He slowly raised his hands. Morgan. They said you were dead. They were wrong, she replied, voice flat. Rafe and his team secured the bridge checking corners, disarming the navigation officer and the radio man. No sign of Volkov. Where is he? Kate demanded. Harrison's mouth tightened. Gone. Took the rib 30 minutes ago. He knew you'd planted something. Didn't know what, but he wasn't taking chances. Where secondary rendezvous, small cove 20 miles west of the primary port, Kate kept her weapon steady despite the tremor trying to build in her arms. And the real cargo, still aboard, lower hold. Behind the false bulkhead in Medical Storage Bay 3, she studied his face. You're being very helpful for a traitor. Something flickered in Harrison's eyes. You don't understand what's happening here, Morgan. Enlighten me. He glanced at the SEALs, then back to her. Not here. Not with them. Rafe stepped forward. We need to move. Ship's still underway, heading for Somali waters. We either take control of the helm or prepare for unwanted company. Kate didn't lower her weapon. You, she said to Harrison, are going to take us to the weapons cache, now. Harrison nodded slowly. I can do that, but you should know I'm not the one who betrayed you. Save it, she said, gesturing with her rifle. Move. As they forced Harrison ahead of them down the corridor, Kate felt the familiar sensation of the ship changing course. Subtle, but to her trained senses, unmistakable. We're turning, she said. Rafe nodded, one hand to his earpiece. Colorado confirms. They're making for deeper water. Why? Kate asked Harrison. He looked back at her, face grim. Because they're scuttling the ship. Dead men tell no tales. Neither do sunken weapons. The mission had just become a race against time. And somewhere ahead, in a small boat racing for the African coast, Volkov was escaping with the one thing Kate needed most answers about: who had really betrayed her and why. But first, they had to survive. The ship groaned beneath them, steel protesting as it began a turn it wasn't designed to execute so rapidly. The sound of emergency alarms cut through the air, muted but insistent. Kate looked at Rafe, calculations running behind her eyes. How long do we have? He didn't sugarcoat it. If they've opened seacocks or set scuttling charges, minutes, not hours. She turned to Harrison. Where's the primary charge? Engine room, remote detonator. Can you disarm it? Harrison hesitated. Yes, but that's not all you need to worry about. What else? Volkov didn't leave alone. He took something with him, something worse than weapons. What? Harrison's eyes met hers directly for the first time. The name of the mole in naval intelligence. Your real target. Kate felt the world shift slightly. Not just the ship's deck beneath her feet, but something fundamental in the mission parameters. Who? She demanded. Harrison shook his head. I don't know. That information was above my clearance, but I know it goes higher than you can imagine. Admiral level. The implications hit Kate like physical blows. If a flag officer was compromised, the entire operation, including the USS Colorado, the SEAL team and their extraction plan, could be compromised as well. Rafe, she said urgently, we need to abort. Get your team out now. Commander Morgan shook his head. Not without the evidence, and not without you. The ship is sinking, she insisted, and we may be blown. Then we'd better move fast, he replied unshaken. Harrison, take us into the engine room, now. As they moved deeper into the ship's interior, Kate felt time compressing around them. Her body was reaching its absolute limits, adrenaline no longer sufficient to overcome the cumulative trauma she'd endured. But her mind remained razor-sharp, processing threats, calculating angles, maintaining situational awareness despite everything. They reached a heavy, watertight door. Beyond it lay the main engineering space. In there, Harrison said. Primary scuttle charge on the port ballast control panel. Rafe assigned 2 operators to guard Harrison, then prepared to breach the engine room with Kate and the remaining SEALs. On 3, he said. 1, 2. Before he could say 3, the ship shuddered violently. A deep, resonant boom echoed through the hull. Not the primary charge, something else. Secondary charges, Harrison said, face pale. We're out of time. Water began seeping under the door, a thin stream rapidly widening. Kate met Rafe's eyes. The decision passed between them without words. The mission had changed. Survival now took precedence over intelligence gathering. Extraction, Rafe barked into his comm. Colorado, this is Vulture Actual. Emergency extraction protocol. Ship is going down. The response came back instantly. Roger, Vulture. SDVs deploying to your last known position. Marking with sonar pings. Rafe turned to his team. Back to the ballast tanks. Move. They began retracing their steps, moving against the increasing tilt of the deck. Water was now flowing freely through corridors, ankle-deep and rising. Emergency lights flashed, casting everything in surreal pulses of red. Kate felt her strength ebbing. Each step required monumental effort. Her vision narrowed, darkness creeping in at the edges. She stumbled, caught herself against a bulkhead. A strong hand gripped her arm. "Harrison, keep moving," he said, surprisingly gentle. "I didn't save your life to watch you drown." She looked at him, confusion breaking through the pain. "What did you say?" "Later," he replied, "if we survive." The ship groaned again, metal screaming as compartments flooded and pressure differentials built. They were running out of time. "How much further?" Rafe called back. "Two junctions," Kate replied, forcing strength into her voice. "Then down." And they pushed forward, fighting against the rising water and the increasingly steep angle of the deck. The path that had been clear on their entry was now an obstacle course of floating debris and partially collapsed ceiling panels. A final violent shudder ran through the ship. The lights failed completely, plunging them into darkness, broken only by the beams of their tactical lights. "She's going down," Rafe said. "Fast track to the SDVs. No time for the ballast route." He turned to the bulkhead beside them and placed another breaching charge directly on the outer hull. It was a desperate move, blowing a hole in the side of a sinking ship to escape rather than drown inside it. "Masks on," he ordered. "Full seal." Everyone complied, pulling their emergency breathing apparatus into position. Kate's hands fumbled with hers, fingers uncooperative. Harrison stepped in, helping secure her mask, checking the seal with practiced movements. Their eyes met through the faceplates, hers questioning his, unreadable. "Breach in 3, Rafe announced. 2, 1. The charge detonated, punching a hole through the ship's side. Water rushed in with explosive force, filling the corridor instantly. "Go!" Rafe shouted through his comm. They swam out through the breach, emerging into the open ocean as the freighter continued its death spiral toward the bottom. Kate fought to orient herself, to control her movements despite her failing body. Above the surface was a shimmering ceiling of light. Below, the dark mass of the ship receded into the abyss, air bubbles streaming from its ruptured hull like silver blood. Kate's strokes were weak, uncoordinated. The mass supplied air, but her body had nothing left to give. She began to sink, unable to maintain buoyancy. Strong hands gripped her again. Harrison on one side, a seal on the other, pulling her upward toward the surface. She wanted to resist, to tell them to save themselves, but she had no strength left, even for that. Her consciousness flickered as they broke the surface. The sky was darkening to twilight, stars just beginning to appear. The same stars she'd used to navigate during her desperate swim. In the distance, the sleek black shape of the USS Colorado weighted its top deck just above the waterline. Safety, answers, justice. If she could just stay awake long enough to reach it. But the darkness was closing in, inexorable as the tide. The last thing Kate Morgan saw before unconsciousness claimed her was the face of Michael Harrison, no longer a traitor in her eyes, but a mystery she needed to solve. Because if he wasn't the one who betrayed her, then who was, and more importantly, why Kate Morgan surfaced from unconsciousness, slowly like a diver ascending through layers of murky water. First came awareness of pain, deep, pervasive, radiating from every cell. Then sound the soft ping of monitoring equipment, the whispered conversations of medical personnel. Finally, light, harsh and unwelcome, as she forced her eyelids open against their weight. She lay in the medical bay of the USS Colorado, surrounded by the submarine's cramped but efficient infirmary. An IV drip fed warm fluids into her arm. Thermal blankets cocooned her body. A Navy corpsman noticed her stirring and moved to her bedside. "Commander," he said quietly, "you're back with us." Kate tried to speak, found her throat raw from salt water and dehydration. The corpsman offered a straw connected to a water cup. She drank slowly, each swallow a small victory. "How long?" she managed. 6 hours, ma'am. "You've been in and out." 6 hours. The mission timeline collapsed in her mind. "Volkov." The corpsman's expression tightened. "No sign. SEAL team's still operational. Commander Morgan is coordinating with naval intelligence." Kate pushed herself upright, ignoring the protest of torn muscles and bruised ribs. "I need to speak with him. Now." "Ma'am, medical protocol requires now, corpsman." Something in her voice, the unmistakable authority forged through years of command, made him reconsider. He nodded once, left the bay, and returned moments later with Rafe Morgan. The SEAL commander looked as if he hadn't slept in days, which was probably accurate. His tactical gear was gone, replaced by the submarine's standard-issue utilities, but his bearing remained unmistakably that of a special operator, alert, composed, ready. "Morgan, chum," he said, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. "Good to see you conscious." "Status?" she asked, dispensing with pleasantries. Rafe pulled up a stool beside her bed. "Harrison's in custody. Ship went down with most of the evidence, but we recovered a hard drive from the bridge. Technical team's working on it now. Volkov's still in the wind, but we have a position on his last known heading." "And the mole?" His expression darkened. "Nothing concrete. Harrison's been talking, but he claims he doesn't know the identity. Says he was recruited by a cutout, never met his real handler." Kate processed this. "I need to speak with him." "You need rest." "That's not your call." Rafe studied her face, recognizing the futility of arguing. "He's in secure holding on the lower deck. But before you talk to him, there's something you should know." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a satellite phone. "This came through on the encrypted channel. For your eyes only." Kate took the device, noting that it was already set to display a message. The sender ID showed Trident Actual, Admiral Harrington's operational call sign. The message was brief: "Poseidon compromised. Trust no one. Rendezvous Echo Protocol only. Confirm identity on contact." She read it twice, then looked up at Rafe. "When did this come through?" "2 hours ago, while you were still unconscious." "Did you inform command?" "No, you're the addressee." Kate nodded, grateful for his discretion. The message confirmed her worst fears: the mole was high enough in the chain to know about Project Poseidon. That narrowed the field considerably. Only a handful of people had that clearance. "I need clothes," she said, already disconnecting her eye with practiced movements. "In 5 minutes with Harrison." Rafe didn't argue. "I'll have a uniform brought in." 10 minutes later, Kate stood outside the makeshift brig, a storage compartment converted for prisoner detention. Her body screamed with every movement, but the submarine's medical officer had provided stimulants and pain blockers that made functioning possible, if not comfortable. The guard acknowledged her approach with a nod. "Ma'am?" "Open it," she ordered. The heavy door swung inward, revealing Michael Harrison seated on a fold-down bench, wrists secured with plastic restraints. He looked up as she entered, and something like relief crossed his features. "Morgan," he said, "you made it." Kate remained standing, partly to maintain authority, partly because she wasn't sure she could stand back up if she sat down. "Talk," she said. Harrison leaned forward. "I know what you think, but I didn't betray you. You handed me to Volkov. I saved your life." Kate laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "By throwing me into the ocean chained to a cement block. By making sure you had a chance." Harrison's eyes met hers directly. "If I hadn't been there, Volkov would have put a bullet in your head and dumped your body. Instead, I convinced him you might have valuable intelligence worth extracting. I knew what was in your wetsuit liner. I knew your training." Kate studied his face for deception. "Why should I believe you?" "Because if I wanted you dead, you wouldn't be standing here." He shifted, wincing, as the restraints cut into his wrists. "I've been working deep cover for 3 years, Morgan. Infiltrating Volkov's operation was my mission long before you came into the picture." "Under whose authority?" Harrison hesitated. "A special access program. Black budget. Code name Chimera." Kate felt a chill that had nothing to do with her recent hypothermia. Chimera was a counterintelligence operation. She'd heard whispers about an initiative to identify moles within the intelligence community by feeding them tailored misinformation. "Your Chimera. An asset, not control." Harrison lowered his voice. "When Harrington brought you in, it complicated everything. A female SEAL was never part of the calculation. It accelerated the timeline, forced the mole's hand. And the weapons? Real enough, American naval technology being siphoned to Russia and China. But that's just the surface. The real target is the source, a senior Navy official selling out our people and our technology." Kate thought of Harrington's message. Poseidon compromised. "Who's the mole, Harrison?" "I don't know." His frustration seemed genuine. "That's what I was trying to uncover when you arrived. My contact protocol was strict dead drops, coded messages, no direct communication." "Convenient." "It's the truth." Harrison leaned closer. "But Volkov knows. That's why he left the ship. He has the name and he's delivering it personally to his Russian handlers. If we don't intercept him before that handoff, the mole disappears and we never find out who betrayed us. Kate considered this. If Harrison was telling the truth, Volkov was now the key to everything. But if Harrison was lying, this could be an elaborate misdirection, a way to lead them into a trap. Where's the handoff happening? Abandoned fishing village 20 miles west of Mogadishu. Former Soviet monitoring station, now a smuggler's haven. 18 hours from now. Kate straightened, decision made. I'll take it to Rafe. Morgan, Harrison called as she turned to leave. There's something else you should know about Harrington. She paused, hand on the door. What about him? He personally selected you for this mission, asked for you by name. Kate frowned. Of course he did. I was his protege. That's not why. Harrison's expression was grave. He chose you because you were expendable. A successful experiment with no paper trail. If you disappeared, there would be no questions, no investigation. The perfect deniable asset. She absorbed this, let the implications settle. Had Harrington set her up? Or was Harrison trying to drive a wedge between her and her mentor? We'll see, she said finally, and left without another word. In the Colorado's Combat Information Center, Rafe Morgan stood before a tactical display reviewing satellite imagery of the Somali coastline. He looked up as Kate entered. Harrison talking, bomb. Yes. She moved to his side, examining the display. Says Volkov is heading for a handoff near Mogadishu, former Soviet station. Rafe nodded, going, matches our intel. Satellite picked up a small craft making landfall 3 hours ago. We've got increased activity at the location Harrison described. You believe in parts of it. Rafe manipulated the display, zooming in on a cluster of dilapidated buildings nestled against a rocky shoreline. This area is known for smuggling operations. Russians maintained a presence even after the Soviet collapse. If Volkov has high-value intelligence, this is where he'd make the exchange. Kate studied the tactical situation. The village was isolated, accessible primarily by sea. Minimal local population. Natural features that made surveillance difficult and provided multiple escape routes. We need to get in there, she said. Colorado's captain is awaiting orders from CENTCOM. If we enter Somali waters without authorization, we don't have time for authorization. Kate pulled out the satellite phone, showed him Harrington's message. This goes higher than standard chain of command. Rafe read the message, expression grave. Echo protocol. That's a recognition code for Chimera assets. Kate looked at him sharply. You know about Chimera? Enough. His eyes met hers. SEAL Team 6 has provided operational support for certain unconventional missions. Off the books. Then you understand what we're dealing with. This isn't just about weapons smuggling anymore. It's about a traitor in the highest levels of naval intelligence. Rafe considered this, then made his decision. I can get a team in, unofficial capacity, small footprint, no official Navy involvement. I'm coming with you. Morgan, with all due respect, you can barely stand. I'm the only one who can positively identify Volkov and verify the intel. Her voice left no room for argument. And I have personal interest in seeing this through. After a moment, Rafe nodded. Gear up. We move in 4 hours. The preparation was silent, methodical. 6 operators, including Kate, equipped with non-attributable weapons and communications gear. No insignia, no identification, nothing that could link them to the United States military if things went wrong. The mission would officially never happen. The Colorado surfaced briefly at dusk, just long enough to deploy a rigid-hull inflatable boat from its forward deck. The team boarded, quickly moving with the practiced efficiency of professionals who had done this many times before. Kate settled into position near the bow, her body fortified with another round of stimulants and pain blockers. As the boat accelerated away from the submarine, she caught the eye of the youngest SEAL on the team, a lieutenant named Walsh who couldn't have been more than 25. He gave her a respectful nod, which she returned. No words were necessary. They all understood the stakes. The boat skimmed across darkening waters for nearly 2 hours, maintaining radio silence. Kate used the time to review what they knew, what they suspected, and what remained unknown. If Harrison was telling the truth, Volkov possessed the name of a mole at the highest levels of naval intelligence. If he was lying, they were potentially walking into an ambush, orchestrated by the very people they trusted. She thought of Harrington's message again. Trust no one, including him. The possibility that her mentor might be the traitor had occurred to her. It would explain why he'd selected her for the mission, why he'd insisted on the highest classification. But it didn't track it with the man she thought she knew, a patriot who had dedicated his life to the Navy, who had pioneered the integration of women into the SEALs despite institutional resistance. Unless that had been part of the deception all along. The boat slowed as they approached the Somali coast. Rafe signaled for silence, pointing to a cove half a mile from the village. They would make landfall, their approach on foot to minimize detection. The team moved ashore with practiced silence, securing the boat and establishing a hasty perimeter. Rafe deployed a small reconnaissance drone, a quadcopter no larger than a dinner plate, equipped with thermal imaging. The feed appeared on his tactical pad, showing the layout of the village. 6 buildings still have power, he noted, 2 with significant heat signatures. Multiple armed individuals patrolling the perimeter. Kate studied the display. That structure on the eastern edge. Soviet-era construction, reinforced walls. Probably their command center. Rafe nodded. Highest concentration of guards, too. That's our target. He laid out the approach. 2 operators would establish an overwatch position on the ridge overlooking the village. The remaining 4, including Kate, would infiltrate from different angles, converging on the command center. Non-lethal takedowns where possible, but mission success took priority. They needed Volkov alive. The team split up, moving through the scrubland with the predatory grace of apex hunters. Despite her injuries, Kate kept pace, her body operating on training, determination, and pharmaceutical assistance. The pain was there, a constant presence at the edge of her consciousness, but it remained manageable for now. As they neared the village, Kate activated her night vision device. The world transformed into shades of green, the thermal overlay highlighting human figures as bright silhouettes. 2 guards stood at the entrance to the command center, AK-47s, held in the casual grip of men who didn't expect trouble. Rafe's voice came through her earpiece, barely above a whisper. Overwatch in position. Count 12 tangos total. 4 on perimeter, 2 at the entrance, 6 inside the main building. Volkov. Thermal signature consistent with target profile in the northeast room. Another figure with him, seated, not restrained. The Russian handler, Kate surmised. Ready on your go. Kate positioned herself behind a crumbling wall 30 meters from the entrance. Walsh and another operator named Chen had circled around to the rear of the building. Rafe was approaching from the west, using a drainage ditch for cover. She keyed her mic once, ready. 3 clicks answered her. The team was in position. Kate drew her sidearm, a 9mm with suppressor. The weight felt good in her hands, solid and reassuring. She checked her watch. 20 seconds until synchronized action. 10, 5, 0. From the ridge came 2 almost simultaneous coughs, the suppressed rifles of the Overwatch team taking out the perimeter guards. Before the bodies hit the ground, Kate was moving, flowing from cover like a shadow given purpose. The entrance guards turned at the sound of approaching footsteps, too late. Kate fired twice, center mass. Both men collapsed without a sound. Rafe appeared beside her, his movements so silent she hadn't heard his approach. Breach, he said, placing a small charge on the door lock. The explosion was little more than a pop, but the door swung inward. They moved through in practice sequence, Kate high, Rafe low, covering different sectors of the room beyond. 4 armed men turned toward the intrusion. 2 went down immediately, caught in the precision fire from Kate and Rafe's weapons. The others reached for their guns, but never completed the motion, as Walsh and Chen breached from the rear entrance, their shots finding targets with surgical precision. The main room was clear in seconds, a testament to thousands of hours of training, to the relentless pursuit of operational perfection that defines SEAL missions. Kate moved toward the northeast room, Rafe beside her. A single door stood between them and Volkov. Between them and the truth. No time for finesse. Rafe kicked the door inward, and they flowed through the opening, like water finding its level, smooth, inevitable, deadly. Volkov sat at a metal desk, a laptop open before him. Across from him sat an older man in the uniform of a Russian naval officer. Both looked up as the door burst inward, expressions of shock quickly replaced by calculation. "Don't move," Kate ordered in Russian, her weapon trained on Volkov's chest. The arms dealer raised his hands slowly, a smile spreading across his face that contained no warmth. "Commander Morgan, you are remarkably difficult to kill." "A family trait," she replied coldly. The Russian officer made a subtle movement toward his sidearm. Rafe's weapon shifted slightly. That would be your last mistake, comrade. The Russian froze, then carefully raised his hands. This is sovereign Russian territory, an act of war. This is a smuggler's den in Somalia, Kate corrected, and you're a long way from diplomatic immunity. She moved to Volkov, keeping her weapon steady despite the tremor that had begun in her arms as the stimulants reached their limits. The name of the American agent. Now. Volkov's smile widened. So direct, so American. No pleasantries, no negotiation. You're out of options. On the contrary, his eyes gleamed with a disturbing confidence. I believe it is you who has run out of time. A sound from outside, the distinctive whop-whop of helicopter steers approaching fast. Rafe tensed. We've got company, not ours. Kate pressed her weapon against Volkov's temple. Last chance, the name. Volkov looked at her, measuring her resolve. Whatever he saw convinced him. It's on the laptop. File name Judas. Encrypted, but the password is Poseidon. A little tribute to your secret program. Kate nodded to Rafe, who moved to secure the computer. She kept her attention on Volkov and the Russian officer who was watching the proceedings with cold calculation. You won't leave Somalia alive, the Russian said. That helicopter carries Spetsnaz operators. Elite ones. We'll take our chances, Kate replied. Rafe had the laptop now, closing it and securing it in his pack. We need to move. 5 minutes max before they're on us. Kate nodded, mind racing through options. Their extraction plan hadn't accounted for Russian special forces. The Arhib was half a mile away across open ground. They'd be exposed vulnerable. Volkov seemed to read her thoughts. Perhaps we can help each other, Commander. I'm listening. Take me with you, back to American jurisdiction. In exchange, I'll give you something more valuable than a name. What could be more valuable than identifying a traitor? The proof of why he betrayed you. Volkov's eyes were deadly serious now. Your admiral isn't selling secrets for money or ideology. It's something far more personal. The helicopter was closer now, its downdraft sending dust swirling outside the building. They had maybe 3 minutes. Rafe, Kate said, secure the prisoners. We're taking them both. The SEAL nodded quickly, binding Volkov and the Russian with zip ties. Walsh and Chen appeared in the doorway, reporting the building was secure, but reinforcements were inbound. Kate keyed her radio. Overwatch, we need diversionary fire on the helicopter. Non-lethal if possible. We're coming out the south exit with 2 packages. Roger, came the reply. We'll give them something to think about. They moved as a unit, prisoners in the center, operators forming a protective diamond around them. Outside, the night had come alive with chaos. The helicopter hovered just above the village center spotlight, sweeping the ground. From the ridge came precision fire, not aimed to kill but to distract. Rounds impacted near the helicopter, forcing it to adjust position, breaking the concentration of its door gunners. Move, Rafe ordered, and they broke into a controlled run toward the southern perimeter. They had covered perhaps 50 meters when the first bullets kicked up dirt at their feet. Russian special forces deploying from the helicopter, establishing firing positions with professional speed. Kate felt rather than saw the round that passed inches from her head. Training took over. She pushed Volkov down behind a low wall, returning fire with measured bursts designed to suppress rather than eliminate. Keep going, she shouted to Rafe and the others. Get the laptop to the boat, I'll cover. Rafe hesitated. Negative, we all go. That's an order, Commander. Her voice held the unmistakable tone of command. The intelligence matters more than any of us. Their eyes met briefly, a moment of understanding between professionals. Rafe nodded once, then directed the team to continue toward the extraction point, taking Volkov and the Russian officer with them. Kate established a firing position behind the wall, conserving ammunition, making each shot count. The Russians were good, methodical, disciplined. They were establishing a perimeter, preparing to close the net. She had maybe 2 minutes before they flanked her position. The pain blockers were wearing off. Each movement sent fresh waves of agony through her abused body, but pain was just information. Useful but not controlling. She regulated her breathing, found her center, and continued to provide covering fire as her team disappeared into the darkness. When she estimated they had sufficient lead, Kate prepared to disengage. One last magazine. Make it count. She rose to a crouch, ready to sprint for the next cover position, when movement to her right caught her attention. A figure approaching not in the distinctive gear of the Russian operatives, but in standard tactical equipment similar to her own. Kate brought her weapon to bear, finger tightening on the trigger. Poseidon, a familiar voice called softly. She froze. Identify. Trident Actual, the voice replied. Admiral James Harrington stepped from the shadows dressed in black tactical gear, face obscured by a balaclava that he now pulled down. We need to move Morgan. Now. Kate stared in disbelief. Sir, how? No time? He gestured toward a narrow alley between buildings. I have a second extraction team on standby. Different route than your SEAL team. Suspicion flared. Why would Harrington be here personally? It violated every protocol of command structure. Sir, with respect, what the hell are you doing in Somalia? Cleaning up my mess. His eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of determination and regret. I couldn't trust this to anyone else. Not after what happened to you. Harrington had been her mentor, her champion, the man who had made Project Poseidon possible, who had believed in her when no one else did. But Harrison's warning echoed in her mind. He chose you because you were expendable. The mole, she said. Do you know who it is? Something flickered across Harrington's face. Yes, and so do you if you've been talking to Volkov. Kate's weapon didn't waver. You sent me the message. Trust no one. Including me, Harrington acknowledged. Good instinct, Morgan. But right now we need to get that laptop and the prisoners to secure custody. There are people who don't want that information to see daylight. The Russians were closing in their movements visible through her night vision. Kate had seconds to decide. Trust Harrington, the man who had shaped her career, or consider him a potential threat. The laptop's with Commander Morgan, she said, watching Harrington's reaction carefully. Heading for the primary extraction point. Then we need to join them. Harrington gestured again toward the alley. My team will provide cover. As if on cue, fresh gunfire erupted from a position to the east, precision shots that forced the Russian operators into cover. Kate made her decision. She would go with Harrington but maintain tactical awareness. If he was the mole, he would reveal himself when they reached the extraction point. If he wasn't, they needed his resources to ensure the mission's success. Lead the way, sir. They moved through the darkness with the efficiency of operators who had trained for exactly these conditions. Harrington, despite his rank and age, displayed the fieldcraft of someone who had never stopped being a SEAL. Kate followed her senses hyper-alert, watching for any indication of betrayal. They reached the edge of the village without incident, then continued into the scrubland beyond, following a route parallel to the one her team had taken. In the distance, Kate could hear the helicopter repositioning the Russians, adjusting their search pattern. How did you find me? She asked as they paused behind an outcropping of rocks. I've been tracking this operation since you went missing, Harrington replied. When the Colorado reported your rescue, I was already en route to the region. Special access authorization, eyes only. Why not use official channels? Because I don't know who I can trust. His expression was grim in the moonlight. The mole has access to everything, Morgan. Every communication, every movement order, every operational plan. Kate studied him. You built Project Poseidon, handpicked every participant. How did you miss a traitor? Who says I did? Harrington's voice was tight with controlled anger. I've known for months that someone was selling our technology. The project was partly a way to flush them out. Using me as bait. Using you because you were the best qualified. He met her gaze directly. And yes, because if things went wrong, the damage would be contained. No public scandal, no congressional hearings, no damage to the Navy's reputation. At least he was honest about it. Kate felt a cold anger building, but kept it contained. The mission came first. Personal reckonings could wait. They continued moving, eventually reaching a small clearing where a second RHIB was concealed under camouflage netting. Two operators in tactical gear guarded it, acknowledging Harrington with silent nods. Where's your SEAL team? Harrington asked, scanning the surroundings. Kate checked her watch. If they had maintained schedule, Rafe and his team should have reached the primary extraction point by now. Should be at the boat, half a mile west. Harrington spoke quietly into his radio. Eagle 6 to Trident team, status. A voice crackled through the speaker. Trident team at extraction point Bravo. Packages secured. Hostiles in pursuit. Roger, hold position. We're inbound. Kate frowned. That's not the primary extraction point. Harrington turned to her, expression unreadable. Change of plans. We needed to ensure operational security. Warning bells rang in Kate's mind. I need to contact Commander Morgan. Not yet. Harrington's tone hardened. We move to the secondary extraction first. Your team has been redirected. Kate felt a subtle shift in the tactical situation. The positioning of Harrington's operators blocking her path to the west. The way the Admiral's hand rested near his sidearm. The laptop, she said, understanding dawning. You don't want it reaching official channels. Harrington's face changed, the mentor's mask, slipping to reveal something colder beneath. That laptop contains information that would compromise national security if mishandled, or expose a traitor if properly investigated. Kate's hand drifted toward her own weapon. Who is it, Admiral? Who turned? For a moment, neither moved. The tableau held master and student mentor and protege, each measuring the other's resolve. Then Harrington sighed, a sound of genuine regret. You always were the best of them, Morgan. Too smart for your own good. It's you, she said, the realization settling like ice in her veins. You're the mole. That's a simplistic term for a complex situation. Harrington's posture shifted subtly, preparing for action. What I've done for the greater good. Sometimes maintaining balance requires adjustments. Selling American weapons technology to Russia, that's your idea of balance. Controlled disclosure, he corrected. Preventing technological surprises, maintaining strategic parity. The alternative is another arms race, another Cold War, millions dead if miscalculation leads to conflict. Kate stared at the man she had respected, had emulated. You're a traitor. I'm a patriot with perspective. Harrington's expression hardened. Now where is the laptop, the real one, not whatever decoy your SEAL commander is transporting? Kate tensed. Harrington had anticipated Rafe's caution. The SEAL commander had indeed created a duplicate, leaving the original with Kate while he transported a decoy. Safe, she replied. Beyond your reach. Harrington's operators moved closer, hands on weapons. No one is beyond reach, Morgan. That's the lesson you should have learned by now. Kate calculated her odds. 2 operators plus Harrington. She was injured, exhausted, operating on borrowed strength that was rapidly fading. But she had one advantage: they wanted her alive. Needed her to lead them to the real laptop. You sent me on that mission expecting me to fail, she said, playing for time. Was I supposed to die or just disappear? Neither. You were supposed to succeed, then be extracted with limited information. Harrington's voice held a note of respect. Your capture was unexpected. Your survival even more so. And Harrison, where does he fit in this? A complication, CIA counterintelligence, suspecting a leak but looking in all the wrong places. I had to manage him carefully. By setting him up as the fall guy. By limiting his access to the truth. Harrington took a step forward. Enough talk. The laptop, Morgan. Now. Kate made her decision. In one fluid motion, she drew her weapon and dived sideways, firing not at Harrington, but at the ground near the operators, creating confusion without casualties. She hit the earth, rolling, came up in a crouch, and sprinted for the tree line. Behind her, Harrington barked orders. The operators pursued but held their fire. They needed her alive. The forest closed around her like an ally. Kate had spent hundreds of hours training in environments just like this. Despite her injuries, despite her exhaustion, she moved with purpose, using every technique she had ever learned to break contact and disappear. Her earpiece crackled. Rafe's voice tense but controlled. Morgan, sit rep. Compromised, she replied, voice barely above a whisper. Harrington is the mole. Repeat, Harrington is the mole. Do not approach primary or secondary extraction points. A pause then. Understood. Alternative extraction plan, Charlie. Coordinates follow. Kate memorized the numbers, then destroyed her communications device. She wouldn't lead Harrington to her team. The forest night engulfed her, a canvas of shadows and silences. Somewhere behind, Harrington and his men searched methodically. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, but also the possibility of completing the mission. She moved steadily toward the new coordinates, her body running on the last reserves of will and training. The laptop was secure, hidden where only she could find it. The evidence it contained would expose a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of naval intelligence. All she had to do was stay alive long enough to deliver it. As dawn broke over the Somali coastline, Kate Morgan emerged from the forest onto a narrow beach, where a third RHIB waited engine idling. Rafe stood in the bow weapon ready, scanning for threats. She approached openly, hands visible. Poseidon, she called. Acknowledged, Rafe replied, lowering his weapon. Kate waded into the surf, letting the cool water wash away some of the night's grime and blood. Hands reached down, pulled her aboard the craft. Walsh, Chen, the other SEALs, all present, all intact. Volkov, she asked. Rafe nodded toward the rear of the boat where the arms dealer sat still bound under guard. Secure. The Russian officer didn't make it. Took a round during extraction. Kate felt no remorse for that. One less loose end. And the laptop. Secure, Rafe confirmed. The real one, not the decoy. Kate nodded, relief washing through her. Harrington will have mobilized every asset he can control. We need to get to neutral ground, someone outside his influence. Already arranged. Rafe pointed eastward where the silhouette of a naval vessel was just visible on the horizon. USS Winston Churchill. Captain owes me a favor. He'll get us to international waters, then transfer to a secure facility stateside. Kate studied Volkov, who watched the proceedings with the detached interest of someone already calculating his next move. And him, insurance, testimony, whatever we need him to be. Rafe's expression was granite. He'll talk. They always do when the alternatives are clearly explained. As the boat accelerated toward the waiting destroyer, Kate felt the weight of the past days, the betrayal, the struggle for survival. The mission still not complete. Harrington was still at large, still dangerous, still able to cause immeasurable harm. But she had survived being thrown into the ocean, had survived the depths, the cold, the shark, the bullet, had survived betrayal by the man she trusted most. And in that survival was a promise not just of personal vengeance, but of justice, of truth revealed, regardless of its cost. The ocean stretched before them, vast and unforgiving. But this time, Kate Morgan wasn't fighting against it. This time, she was riding its tide all the way home. Admiral James Harrington stood on the beach watching the boat disappear toward the horizon. His operators waited silently behind him, awaiting orders that he didn't give. He had miscalculated, underestimated both Kate Morgan's resilience and her tactical acumen. The mistake would cost him, but not everything. Not yet. He touched the secure phone in his pocket. There were contingencies in place. There were always contingencies. Sir, one of his men ventured. Orders. Harrington turned, his face composed once more into the mask of command. We withdraw, regroup, prepare for contingency alpha. And Commander Morgan. Harrington looked once more at the horizon where his former protege had vanished with evidence that could destroy him. His expression held something almost like pride. She's earned her trident, he said softly. Now we'll see if she's earned what comes next. The game wasn't over, it had merely entered a new phase. One where the hunter and the hunted would change places again and again until only one remained. In the vast chess match of global intelligence, Harrington had lost a piece, an important one, but not the king, not yet. And in the shadows of power, the real game was just beginning.